Hello and welcome everybody. Today I will be reviewing chapter 526 My Name Is, and I'm going to be reviewing it very differently than I usually do. I'm not too sure how different it will be at the end of the editing and all of that. I'll leave that up to you guys, so if you find whatever I'm doing to be worse than my usual format, then I will gladly go back to that. I'm simply trying to experiment with different types of scripts at the moment. The idea is that this format will have no retelling of the chapter, as I'll assume you've read it. So I'll mostly discuss the bits that happens within the chapter, at least try my best. Oh well, with that said, let's get into the chapter review. The chapter cover page that we have this week is much like last week, a redrawn of an old chapter, which I have to say I quite like. I gotta hand it to Hiro. Since these early chapters didn't look exactly like the manga is looking right now, the style is completely different and it's really nice to see some old content remade. Hopefully he'll keep doing this all the way until Fairy Tail actually ends. That would really be satisfying to me. Okay, so let's begin with the actual chapter, shall we? August is fighting Kana and Gildarts as they were the last chapter, and we see some nice team effort from Kana and Gildarts, even though it looks as if August is handling their attacks without any problems, of course. Kana and Gildarts can't really agree on certain matters though mid-fight, which is typical, such as matter why Gildart is actually left the guild so frequently even after finding out that Kana is his daughter, and apparently the reason for that is that he thought he'd be in her way, and he actually offers to remain in Magnolia full time if that is what she truly wishes. So although this may not be what it's pointing to, this is suddenly making Gildarts into a proper candidate for a guild master in the future. Some of you will know that I didn't actually think Gildart would turn out to become the guild master because he's too much of an adventuring type. But if he is in fact willing to remain for good, then he will of course become my favorite candidate for a new guild master, because he is a fan favorite when it comes to characters in Fairy Tail. So I think he'd make a perfect candidate if he actually decides to stay in the guild for good. We get to a point where Gildarts explains how far he's willing to go for Kana, as we see Gildarts getting pretty scary looking and determined to anything in order to keep Kana safe, even if it means dying in the process. So when I first read this, I of course thought Gildarts was going to do something really big, since he brought up the idea of dying himself, but by the looks of things he's just keeping August at bay as of yet, although he did take a hit by August's staff, but even that turned out to be very ineffective from August, because the point of impact on Gildart's body was actually a prosthetic part that Action Logia had already eaten, according to Gildarts. So Gildarts didn't end up dying in this chapter, nor will he most likely, given the end of this fight. For you who have actually read it will know what I'm talking about. So we then cut off to Zerv, Larcade and Natsu, and we actually see Larcade expressing what could only be explained as shock as Zerv blows a hole through his stomach, and then we get one of the biggest reveals yet, although not entirely surprising. Larcade is actually not Zerv's child, because Zerv says that he has no child, and he also explains that Larcade is simply a body that was made when trying to create Natsu. I'm not entirely sure why he chose to wait so long to bring life to Larcade, in all honesty, but regardless he did, and that's why Larcade is by Zerv's side. He really did not have a choice, as Zerv raised him to believe that Zerv was his father. I mean, I guess in a way he is, the same way he's a father to Natsu. He's their creator after all. The difference being that Natsu is actually the ultimate version, which was released from his own grasp. I do wonder why he did that. I do recall something like Natsu wouldn't do what Zerv told him, while he did seem to obey Igneel to some extent, so I guess that might be the whole reason why he kept Larcade and let Natsu go. As I said, Zerv claims that he actually doesn't have a kid, but later on in this chapter, well, about right after the Larcade and Zerv part, we find out that there was a child, but it wasn't actually Larcade, strangely enough. A flashback of Precht handling Mavis's body while in the crystal is shown to us, but this time we see a child in a basket, which is the life that he sensed in Mavis's body the first time that we got a flashback, which I think was the previous chapter in fact, but at the same time we couldn't really tell if he meant an actual child or just Mavis's magic, as he referred to it as a life and not a child. This is when things actually get interesting, because Precht abandons this child in the middle of nowhere, and I found this absolutely stupid, because had this been the modern Fairy Tail, he would have been kept in the guild most likely and been race by the fellow members of the guild. But I guess Precht wasn't the friendliest fellow, eh? So this child then, which is abandoned somehow, manages to get by already as an infant all by himself, and we learn this through the narrative of this flashback, which says that the child somehow retained the memories of its parents. The mother being Mavis, of course, and well, the father, you can probably guess who it is just from that. But if you for some reason don't know, Zervis is the father of this child, so the Zervis ship is kinda confirmed in a fucked up way. Be it necrophilia or moments before her death, who knows. Gildarts versus August then resumes, of course, and this is a good part of this chapter because Gildarts learns the reality of August's magic. The magic which August has is not as extreme as we previously thought. For the longest of times, we've all been thinking that his magic is all types of different magics, but in actuality his magic is actually to copy other people's magic as well as nullifying it. This is a factor which changes this fight for the better as we also learn of his magic's weakness. So Gildarts explains that the weakness of August's magic is that it cannot copy holder type magics, and we learn this through the fact that August chose to dodge Kana's attacks, which is her card magic, but he didn't do that with Gildart's magic. He simply copied or nullified his magics, so we learned that the holder type's magic is actually the weakness to August. As I've seen on other places on the internet, since this became official, apparently Lucy could defeat August because she doesn't have her keys. This is a scary thought, seeing as Lucy is, well, you know, she's a special girl. I find it strange though because, I mean, have you seen August? He looks like a character from Dragon Ball Z. He's like Master Roshi on steroids. He could probably physically punch her to death. So near the end of this chapter we learn that the child never told Zerv who he was, and we can confirm this is still the case, seeing as Zerv actually told Larkay that he has no child. Imagine the moment he finds out. I mean, I can't guarantee that Zerv will care since he's Zerv, who needs to have zero emotion to not have his curse go crazy. But yeah, the child explains that he helped his father rule the kingdom, and since it's Zerv, you can bet your ass that kingdom is Alvarez. Gildarts then wipes August out through one lucky loophole, that being the fact that Gildart's left arm is actually completely prosthetic, so August can't counter it through his magic, and we see August blowing up all over the place as Gildarts calls out a second spell he's ever called out in the entirety of the Fairytale series. And to end this chapter off, we of course find out who this child actually is, as Zerv explains that the child resembles a girl he once knew that he met during a particular time of the year, August, and thus giving August his name. Well, that was the chapter of 526. The next chapter is called Passion, so that'll be quite hard to predict, I imagine, seeing as passion could refer to a lot of characters and it may even have more than one meaning. But I'll leave all of that for the prediction, which I might hold off until Wednesday because of this change in schedule, because of the later chapter release, so fear not, it'll come eventually. Anyway, I'll end the video here. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Was this a good chapter or a bad chapter? I've heard a crazy mix of opinions already. Personally, I quite liked it, but it wasn't a top chapter by any means, but it was perfectly fine. And as always, if you did, please like this video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new to my channel. See you soon.